Anyone? Hmm? Am I audible? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Madhya, can you tell me what is reproduction?
Giving birth to someone or giving rise.
Hmm. Meaning when any parent gives or brings a young one to life, right? That is reproduction, isn't it?
Yes.
Hmm. Okay. So see, that reproduction is done so as to ensure that continuity of life is there. Now, reproduction is of two types. The first type is asexual reproduction. The second type is sexual reproduction. Now, talking about asexual reproduction, in this case, only one parent is involved. But in the case of sexual reproduction, both the parents are involved. Okay. Now, moving forward, we will be discussing in depth about the asexual reproduction. Now, also, do you people have the notes for this chapter? You have the notes, right?
Yes.
And what, Shweta, what about you? All right. So, talking about the asexual reproduction. Now, this is the type of reproduction in which the new individuals are produced from a single parent, since only one parent is involved. And since only the parent, like single parent, is involved, there is no need for the formation of gametes because, like there is no fusion of gametes. So, why should there be the formation of gametes? So, there are no gametes, and the offsprings that are obtained, offspring or children you can call them. So if like the offsprings that are obtained as a product of asexual reproduction, they are known as clones. Do you know why they are known as clones? Hmm?
No, ma'am.
See, the reason why they are known as clones is because they resemble each other. They are like, for example, if one the offspring is like this, for example, the other would be like exact copies of each other. Okay, so when anything is exact copy of anything, it's like it's called as a clone. So here the offsprings are clone because first of all they resemble each other, also they resemble their parents. So this is the reason why the offsprings that are obtained as a result of asexual reproduction, they are known as clones. Got it? This
Yes, ma'am.
Also, like while I'm teaching, if you have any doubts in between, also you can ask me. Okay. So feel free to speak up in my class. I think this is like my first ever class with you people. So whenever you feel like you have a doubt or whenever you want to ask any, even if it is like a silly question, you can ask me. Okay. Be frank because you are here to learn and I'm here to teach. So you can ask me anything. Okay.
Okay.
No shyness is needed. Okay. All right. Moving forward. Now, let us see like, okay, we have got the basic knowledge about asexual reproduction now. There are many types by which asexual reproduction is performed. The first one is fission. Now, in fission, what happens is that one parent body gets split up into two offsprings. This is first, this is two. So, one parent body would divide and form two daughters, right? Two daughter cells. This type of asexual reproduction is known as fission. So let us read what's the definition. So it is an asexual reproduction in which, and always remember that fission mostly takes place in the case of unicellular organism. So in this, a unicellular organism divides and forms two daughter cells. Now, this fission can be of two types. The first type is binary fission. The second type is multiple fission. Now, let us see each of them. So, when we talk about binary fission, Now, always remember, students, that whenever you're talking about or whenever you're discussing about any type of asexual reproduction method, the examples are very important. So, you must mention the examples in your answer. For example, binary fission, it takes place in which organism? So, here the example is amoeba and paramecia. Okay, so these things are important in this particular topic. Now let us look what happens in the binary fission. Now, for example, if we are taking amoeba. So first of all, the DNA would start dividing. It would start moving towards the opposite pole. So first the DNA will divide and then the cytoplasm will divide, which will result finally into two daughter cells. And this is how the binary fission takes place in the case of amoeba and paramecia. Got it? This is the first type of fission. Now let us look at the second type, that is multiple fission. Now multiple fission takes place in which? So it takes place in the plasmodium. Now this plasmodium is a protozoan. Now always remember that whenever if we are talking about any asexual reproduction type, so it requires a lot of favorable conditions such as enough space, such as enough nutrients and everything. But just in case those favorable conditions are not there, okay, it's absent. So, under unfavorable condition, the organism would reproduce asexually by multiple fission. Here, what happens? During unfavorable condition, cyst formation takes place, meaning their whole body will be covered with a thick covering that is known as a cyst. Then when the favorable conditions arise, one organism divides into many daughter cells. So, in the multiple fission, one organism will divide into many daughter cells and it takes place in the case of plasmodium. So, with this, the fission is over, the first type of asexual reproduction. Is it clear up till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, moving forward, let us talk about the second method of asexual reproduction, that is budding. Again, the example is very important. So, budding takes place in Hydra yeast. Now, what is budding? So, see, in the budding type of asexual reproduction, a bud, which is an outgrowth, okay, it is a projection, it is an outgrowth, it is formed on the body of the organism. For example, if this is the parent's body, okay, parent of like the, for example, is the hydra's body, then a bud will arise on it, an outgrowth. Okay, now when this bud would develop into a new organism, okay, once like see, it will get all the nourishment, nutrition from the parent body, but then it would separate from the parent's body and become a whole independent organism. Okay, so this method is known as budding. It takes place in the case of yeast and hydra. Always remember one thing, that this bud that is formed, it is on the body, not in. Okay, it is not from like in the within. It is always formed on the body outside. Then coming on to the third type of asexual reproduction, that is regeneration. Now, regeneration takes place in the case of Linaria, Hydra, and starfishes. These are the examples. Now, if you look at regeneration, it is sort of like an ability by which if you take a planaria and you cut it into three pieces, each of these pieces will give rise to a whole new organism. So, talking about regeneration, individual organism. Now, mostly the fragmentation, it will take place in the multicellular organisms. Do you people know the difference between multicellular and unicellular? Hmm? Anyone? What is the difference between unicellular and multicellular organism? Madiha, can you tell me?
Unicellular means there is only uh,
One.
one organism or something.
Single cell organism. Single cell organism.
And multicellular means? What is the meaning of multicellular organism?
More than
Organisms which are made of many cells.
Correct.
Two or more cells.
When an organism is made up of just one cell, this one cell is the body of the whole organism. That is unicellular. Multicellular means more than one, more than two cells. Okay. Now, talking about them, so multicellular means many cells are there in the body of the organism. So, in this type of asexual reproduction, which is fragmentation, so here the body of a simple multicellular organism would break up into fragments. Okay, and then each of these fragments would grow into new individuals. Got it? So here, if we take a spirogyra and after maturing, the spirogyra breaks up into certain fragments. For example, it got broken into two fragments. Then each of those fragments would develop into a new organism. But if you break it, like if it gets broken into three, then three organisms. Getting my point? So this was fragmentation. Now, can somebody tell me what is the difference between regeneration and fragmentation? Did you find any difference between them? Anyone?
Um, regeneration is an accidental process.
Which one?
Regeneration.
Correct. Very good. Regeneration is sort of like, just imagine it like an ability. Like, for example, if the body of any like organism does get broken down, then each of those broken parts will develop into a new organism. But fragmentation is a proper method wherein after maturation, the body of the multicellular organism, for example, Spirogyra, it is getting broken up into fragments on maturation. Very good. All right. Now moving forward, let us talk about the next type of asexual reproduction method, that is spore formation. Now, spore formation takes place in the case of rhizopus, which is the bread mold, and mucor. Both of these are fungi. Okay, both of these are fungus. Now, what happens is that spores are formed inside a structure which is known as sporangia. Sporangia is a structure that will make tiny cells that are known as spores. Now, when these spores are liberated, okay, meaning released, when they come in contact with a moist surface, humid climate, then it develops into the new individual. So, here the spores are formed inside the body or inside the sporangia. Sporangia is this sac-like or balloon-like structure. So, spores are formed inside that. And when these spores come in contact with a moist surface, it would develop into a new fungus. Got it? So this was spore formation. Now comes vegetative propagation. Now in this method, new plants, now see, do you people know that there are two types of cells in the whole entire body? Okay, there are two types of cells. First is the reproductive cell, meaning the cells that are involved or perform the reproduction process. Then there are the body cells. Okay, and body cells can also be called as the vegetative parts. So, for example, if root, shoot, leaves, all of these things are there. These are the body cells. But if anther is there, filament is there, these are the reproductive cells. So when the new organism is made through the vegetative parts, not from the reproductive cells, through the body cells, such as the roots, leaves, or stems, and here there is no help of any reproductive organ, then this type of method is known as vegetative propagation. Now, if we are taking the root for the purpose of vegetative propagation, then the example is dahlia and sweet potato. If we are taking stem, then the example will be rhizome, tuber, bulb. Rhizome in the case of ginger, tuber for potato, bulb for onion. And then comes the leaves, that is for bryophyllum. Bryophyllum is a plant wherein the leaves, the margin of the leaves, they contain buds. Now these buds, they grow into a new bryophyllum plant. So this was vegetative propagation. Now all of these are the natural methods. Moving forward, there are three methods such as the cutting, the layering, and the grafting. These three are the artificial methods of vegetative propagation: cutting, layering, and grafting. Got it? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
All right, now let us look at the advantages of asexual reproduction. So, first advantage is that it takes much less time. Second, it is very less complicated. It does not involve any gamete formation, gamete fusion, all of these things are not there. And the third is that it would preserve the parental character. It preserves whatever characters are there in the parents, it gets preserved because it gets transferred into the offspring. And since the offsprings are clone of each other and also to the parent, so the characters of the parent are preserved. So with this, we have come to the end of the asexual reproduction. Now tell me if you have any doubts, anything you people want to ask me from this particular topic.
Ma'am, can you explain about variations and
Variation?
questions related to that?
Dear, but variation is from the different chapter. Right now I'm teaching how do organisms reproduce.
Okay, ma'am.
But you want to learn about variation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, see, variation is basically when in the offspring there is the introduction of any new character. Okay, the introduction of a new character in the offspring is known as variation. And basically, it is the degree by which the offspring would differ from the parents, meaning what are certain qualities that make these offspring different from their parents. Got it? That is variation. Like normally, when during the process of heredity, the characters are inherited by the offspring. Now, what will happen is that these sometimes a new character can be there in the offspring. This is variation. The difference, the change, or the degree by which they differ, that is variation. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Now, from asexual reproduction, do you have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Yeah. Do you want to note it down? Like a very short, crisp version, so you can note it down. Okay. Hmm?
Yes.
Yeah. And also tell me when you're done so that I can scroll the screen for you.
Done, ma'am. Done, ma'am.
You are also done, Madiha?
Completed, ma'am. Done, ma'am. Done, ma'am. Done, ma'am. Done, ma'am.
Done? Madhura, you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, this was asexual reproduction. Is it clear? Do you have any doubts in that now? Hmm?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now let's come on to the sexual reproduction. So in the sexual reproduction, here what will happen is that both the parents, which will be the one male and one female, both of them are involved. Now in this case, in the case of sexual reproduction, new variations are created. Okay. New variations, basically new type of characters, new type of, the formation of a different combination of DNA that will happen. Why? Because first of all, there is the fusion of gametes. Now, let's start with the sexual reproduction in the case of flowering plants. Now, flowers, they contain the reproductive parts of the flower. Okay, see, the plant, like how us humans, we have a reproductive part of our body. Same way, the reproductive part of the body of a plant is the flower. Now, looking at the parts of flower, so there is pistil or carpel, which is the female reproductive unit, and then there is the stamen. Okay, 1 second. All right. So talking about the parts of the flower, so first is the pistil or the carpel, then the stamen. These two, the pistil, you can also call pistil as carpel. So the pistil is the female reproductive part or female reproductive unit, and stamen is the male reproductive unit. But on a wholer or larger basis, the male part of the flower is androecium, the female part of the flower is gynoecium. Pistil and stamen are one unit of it. Now, apart from that, on a flower, we also see sepals and we see petals. Now, sepals and petals, they are the accessory parts of the flower, meaning they are not there directly involved in the reproduction process. Now, the petal, now everybody knows what a petal is, right? But have you seen the little tiny green structures that are present just below the flower? Those are the sepals. Now, in the case of flowers, the flowers can be unisexual, in which the flower would contain either the pistil or the stamen, meaning either it will contain the female in one body or the male. This type of flower is unisexual. Bisexual flowers are those that would contain both the stamen and the pistil in one. So, bisexual. The example for bisexual is hibiscus. You'll find these kind of flowers like bisexual flowers in the case of hibiscus. Now, whereas in the case of mustard too. Now, in the case of unisexual, the example is papaya and watermelon. Now, moving forward. This much is clear. The parts of a flower, why flower is the reproductive part, everything is clear? Or do you have any doubts up till now?
No, ma'am, it's clear.
Okay, very good. Now moving forward, let us talk about the male reproductive part of the flower. That is the stamen. Stamen, and since it is the male reproductive part, it is responsible for the production of male gametes. Now, the male gametes in the case of a flower are pollen grains. Now, stamens have two parts. The first part of stamen is anther. The second part of stamen is filament. And these pollen grains that are the male gametes, they are formed inside the anther. So, finally, we can say that stamen is the male reproductive part. Anther is the part of a stamen and pollen grains are made inside the anther. Now pollen grains are yellowish in color and they are very sticky. So this was about the male reproductive part of the flower. This is the structure, the function and everything. Now coming on to the female reproductive part of the flower. So it contains stigma, style and ovary. These are the three parts of a pistil or a carpel. Now, stigma is the landing platform for pollen. Okay, style is this long, slender part, and then we have the basal bulgy part, that is the ovary. Now, let us see. Carpel or pistil is at the center of the flower, right in the middle, like how I have drawn here. These are stamen. Right in the middle will be carpel. Now, looking at the parts of the carpel, so let's start from the bottom. So it is the ovary. Now, the bulged and swollen part of the pistil, the bulgy and the swollen part is the ovary. The ovary contains, like inside the ovary is the ovules. And then the ovule has the egg cell. Now, this egg cell is the female gamete. Pollen grains are the male gamete, egg cell is the female gamete. This much is clear. The stamen, the pistil is clear. Tell me, girls, is it clear?
Yes.
All right. Now, moving forward, let us look at pollination. Now, we have seen what is the male gamete of the flower, and we have also seen the male gamete of the male gamete and female gamete. Now, we will see what is the next phenomena, and it is pollination. Now, when the pollen grains, they are transferred to the stigma of the flower, meaning pollens, the process of transfer of pollens from the anther, once they are released, to the stigma. This whole process is known as pollination. And as I told you, that stigma is the landing portion, like it's a landing platform for the pollen grain. So once the pollen grain are released from the anther, they will be transferred and they will land on the stigma. Now there are ways by which this happens. So they are known as the types of pollination. So there are two types basically. First is self-pollination and then there is cross-pollination. Now, if I tell you about self-pollination, so self, what is the meaning of self? Like one's own, right? So see, what happens in the case of self-pollination is that the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma of the same flower, meaning in one flower only. But in the case of cross-pollination, the pollen grains will be transferred to the stigma of different flower or also different plant. So these are the two variations that come in the pollination. Pollination is of two types. The first one is self-pollination and then there is cross-pollination. Up till now, is everything clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Now moving forward, see, we are seeing that the pollens are transferred. They are transferred, right? We are seeing this word. But how are they transferred? There must be something, right? So, yes, there is. So, there are many agents that will be there for the process of pollination. And these agents are known as pollinators, meaning the organism or the agents that cause about pollination. Now, the greatest thing to know here is that the pollinators are of two types. The first one is abiotic, means non-living. So one agent of the pollination can be non-living. The other, which is biotic, they are the living pollinators. Now, talking about those cases, so what are the examples? Wind and water. These are the two abiotic pollinators, meaning they are what? Non-living, right? Talking about the animals, these are the biotic pollinators. So there are two types of pollinators, biotic and abiotic. Now, in the animals, insects are the most common type of agents of the pollination, and under that, honeybees are the best example. Have you seen honeybees like wandering around flowers?
Yes, ma'am.
Because they are great pollinators. We'll see how. But up till now, pollination, the different biotic and abiotic factors, all of these things are clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, very good. Now, what will happen is that once the pollen grains has been released from the anther, these pollen grains, either with the help of water or with the help of wind or with the help of insects, they are transferred to the stigma, and stigma is the landing portion. So once they will be transported over here, then a phenomena happens is that pollen tube starts forming. For example, if this was a pollen, then what happens? A tube starts coming out of it like this. Okay, this process is known as pollen tube formation. So after landing on the stigma, the pollen tube formation begins, and then the pollen tube reaches the ovule inside the ovary. Now this pollen tube carries the male gametes. Okay, two male gametes. So let us look at the events. So the pollen lands on the stigma, then the pollen tube grows. This process of the growth of the pollen tube is also known as pollen germination. So that happens. Then the male gametes travel to the female germ cell, that is the egg cell. So now what will happen? The male gamete will fuse with the egg cell. Got it? So these are the events that take place during after the pollination has been done, meaning the transfer of the pollen grain has been done. Now, after that, what are the events that are happening? That is what we are discussing right now. Then, the male gamete will fuse with the female gamete, and this process is known as fertilization. The fusion of male and female gamete is known as fertilization, and it results in the formation of a zygote, that is diploid. Do you people know the difference between diploid and haploid?
Yes,
Can you explain it to me, please? The difference between diploid and haploid. Say it.
diploid contains two sets of chromosomes, two
Very
daughter
good.
cells, and undergoes mitosis.
Correct. See, the diploid. Diploid means two. Okay, two sets of chromosomes are present. Then that organism, that cell is known as a diploid cell or diploid organism. So the zygote is diploid, but the gametes, always remember, the gametes will always be haploid. And how do we show that? We show gametes or haploid with N, and we show diploid with 2N. So just imagine one N is fusing with another. 1N plus 1N gives us 2N. This is what happens. So now we have seen what will happen in the whole fertilization process. Now tell me if you have any doubts, any questions. I hope it's clear up till now.
Yes,
Okay. All right then. Is there anything you people want to ask me?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Now, we like from the next class, we will continue from the post-fertilization events. We'll see, okay, now after the fertilization has been done, What are the
Um,
events? Yes. What happened? Say. Who said it? Shweta, was it you? Hello. All right, students. So that was it for today's class. And now we'll start like from the post fertilization events from